Now, home is a lot of work. Just plain work. When work at home is planned and organized for cooperation, there can usually be more time for leisure.
I'm certainly in favor of those things. Leisure, fun.
Who isn't?
Wouldn't we all be happier if we worked out a little system for living together in harmony?
But how can we manage them?
We'll have to work out the full answer together.
Say, Mom, you're swell.
Most family problems can be solved through frank and friendly discussion, which points the way to a happy family life.
You know, this is beginning to be quite a family project.
It certainly is.
Raise your hand today if your family is perfect. No one? I'm surprised. Well, hopefully, would you? Oh, because, you know, my family is perfect. You know, hopefully, though, we're not like the family in the story I'm about ready to tell you, though. You know, you hear jokes all the time about, you know, someone being left behind on a trip or something like that. But I've often wondered in my mind, do these things really happen? Well, this was actually on the news, so I guess it does. In WMC-TV in Memphis, Tennessee, reported the story a few years back about a Texas dad who didn't want to share his name, who had some unexpected excitement on his family vacation. After the man and his family spent the night at a hotel in Memphis, they stopped to eat and fill up their gas tank. And, well, that's when the trip got really interesting. So when the family hit the road, they left the dad behind at the gas station. The father explained what happened. He said, you know, somebody had been sleeping all night in the back, and they were going to drive, and I was going to get in the back and sleep. And he said, I went inside to get my change for the gas, and they thought, well, I'd already loaded up, and so they closed the doors to the van, and off they went. Well, the dad tried to call his own cell phone, which was in the van, but nobody answered it. He said 6 different cell phones, and nobody answered. My phone was in there because it was on the charger, and nobody answers it. And then all of a sudden, they all start going to voicemail. I mean, that's odd. Well, the father called the police, but it was social media that saved the day. He was able to borrow a computer from a local motel and got in touch with his family through, of all things, Facebook. And so the van was about 100 miles away by the time he finally reached his family. Now, the story did have a happy ending because the family did turn around and they picked up their dad and then they continued on their vacation. The dad, though, indicated to the reporters that he's pretty confident that the entire incident really was just a huge mistake. It wasn't on purpose, so he tells. You know, your family is not perfect. My family is not perfect. And you know what? That's okay. After all, we're imperfect people living in an imperfect world. But we do live in a world where everyone can create assumptions on our lives based on the perceptions we give, and, you know, especially through social media. You know, this can be detrimental to our relationships and our marriages and our families. After all, who says we have to have all of our ducks in a row? We're all in this imperfect world together, and no one has it perfectly together. But amidst all of our shortcomings, the family, our families, are at the heart of God's plan for His world. You know, there was a TV show that was on a while back called Everybody Loves Raymond, and it's about a man by the name of Raymond Barone and his wife, Deborah. And they live across the street from Ray's parents, Frank and Marie. Well, Ray's single brother, Robert, lives with his parents. And so after an on and off relationship with Amy, Robert and Amy finally get engaged. And so there's an episode that takes place a little shortly thereafter their engagement where Robert and Amy are hosting a brunch at Amy's apartment for Ray and Deborah and Marie and Frank. But unexpectedly, Amy's parents show up to visit for the first time. Her parents, though, really weren't there for a visit. Really, rather, they were there to try to get Amy to break off this engagement that she had with Robert. Well, the two families, of course, were meeting for the first time. And these two families are as different as night and day. There couldn't be two families that were more different than each other. And so a war of words ends up breaking out between the families. Feelings get hurt. And Amy just runs into the bedroom and locks herself in. Well, several family members go and try to talk to her and try to encourage her to come out, but no one is successful. And so finally Ray goes to the door and tries to talk to Amy. And he tells her that she and Robert, well, they just need to think about their own lives and what's best for them and not what the rest of the family thinks. And at the end of that whole little scene, Ray says, after all of the other things, he says, nothing good can come from family. Those are some pretty strong words. But Amy ends up coming out of the bedroom, and she and Robert, well, they decide they're going to go out for brunch, and they just leave the rest of the family there to figure it out on their own. You know, we may all feel like that at some times. Nothing good can come from family. I mean, the biggest struggles we have in our lives happen in our families. Family is one of our most vulnerable places. You know, the people in our family rarely see us at our best. And they most always and often see us at our worst. You see, when the masks come off, the masks that we put on for the outside world come off when we get home, well, the real us comes out, doesn't it? And we get to see the real us in our families. But you know, despite all of the problems we may experience in our families, the family is one of the foundational godly institutions of the world. You see, in the beginning, God created man, and then He created woman, and then He told them and instructed them to be fruitful and multiply. And in doing so, God blessed, even I would say ordained, the institution of family. Paul, in Ephesians chapter 3, in that chapter, is talking and praying for the church in Ephesus, and he's praying that they wouldn't be discouraged. And so he says, because of this, for this reason, that I don't want you to be discouraged, I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. Every family in heaven and on earth comes from God. God is the source of family. God must be at the center of our family. I pray that each one of us can say, as Joshua did. In Joshua 24, he says, fear the Lord and serve Him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live. But as for me and my household, what? We will serve the Lord. I pray that we each could say that in our families. But you know what? We don't live in a perfect world, in a world of isolation. Because you know what? Satan was cast out of heaven because he decided to challenge God. And he roams the earth today. And from the beginning of the world, Satan has worked to destroy the family that God created. From the temptation of Adam and Eve to go against, did God really mean what He said? To the jealousy of one brother's heart that caused Cain to kill Abel, Satan has been working to crush the time-honored institution of the family. And you know, so this morning, we need to love our families. For the love of our families, we must protect them, cherish them, and love them with all that we have. We must stand against the powers of the world that are working to destroy our families today. Well, how do we do that? I'm glad you asked. Because I think there are three things this morning, three ways at a minimum, that we can love and protect our families. And so as we begin, we must guard our families against the temptations that destroy the family. The first of those is that we must guard against the temptation to love ourselves over loving others and the love of God. A.W. Tozer describes what self-love or selfish love really is in an article in Christianity Today. And he writes and he says, the labor of self-love is a heavy one indeed. Think for yourself whether much of your sorrow has not arisen from someone speaking slightly of you. As long as you set yourself up as a little god to which you must be loyal, there will always be those who will delight to offer affront to your idol. Then how can you hope to have inward peace? The heart's fierce effort to protect itself from every slight, to shield its touchy honor from the bad opinion of friend and family and enemy, will never let the mind rest. You see, selfishness, self-love, putting ourselves above others puts us at odds with everyone. It causes us to put up our guards, or as A.W. Tozer said, our shields, in order to protect ourselves. Because you see, everything that is said is an insult. Everything that others do is there to hurt us. Everything and everyone is out to get us, and they're against us. And so you see, selfish love robs our families of peace. When in a family the members are looking out only for themselves, no one wins. No one is encouraged. No one is edified. No one else is loved. And the family begins to destroy itself from within. What does that look like? Well, Psychology Today published a listing that they called the 12 Rules of a Dysfunctional Narcissistic Family. A narcissistic family being defined as everyone is in the family is only looking out for themselves. And so here's how that list shaped up. Again, the 12 rules of a dysfunctional narcissistic family. Number 1, acceptance is conditional. Number 2, submission is required. Number 3, someone must be blamed for all problems. Number 4, being vulnerable is dangerous. Number 5, everyone must take sides. Number 6, there is never enough love and respect to go around. Number 7, feelings are wrong. Number 8, competition, not cooperation, rules the day. Number 9, appearances are more important than substance. Number 10, rage is normalized. Number 11, denial is rampant. Number 12, there is no safety from blame and rage. Boy, that's no way for a family to function, is it? That's horrible. Instead, Paul encourages us in Romans 12 to be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. That's a much better way to live. So be on guard for those who love themselves. We also need to guard against ungrateful and unworthy family members. Now, who are those? What are those? They are the people in the family that have no regard for blessings that they are given as a family. For example, it's children that take for granted the sacrifices that their parents make by consuming all of their time and resources because they believe that the family revolves completely around them. They get completely mad because the parents are not shuffling every moment of every day in their lives to allow them to be the center of attention and for everything to be done for them. Selfish, again. It's the husband or the wife that regularly mistreats the other. And then they go on about their business as if there are no problems in the family at all. Then there are those that cause division and heartache. And they're the ones that are never willing to ask for forgiveness for their wrong deeds, nor do they repair or restore the broken relationships that they have caused. You know, we need to be on guard against those kinds of attitudes in our family. We also need to guard against being too busy. Now, doing things, that's not wrong, but sometimes we have to say no to outside activities and plans. Sometimes we have to not go to this movie or that event or this concert. Not every moment of every day has to be busy. When we're stressed about filling every moment with activities and everybody going 100 different directions instead of growing closer together, families are pulled apart. Having so much going on so that we can fill our Facebook and Instagram feeds with picture after picture of what our family is doing constantly, that's not real. We need to get away from that. We need to make time for each other. There needs to be time when we can just have time for each other with nothing going on, just to enjoy each other's company, talk with each other, share each other's burdens. There's all kinds of temptations that challenge and hurt the family. These are just a few, but I hope it kind of gives you the idea that we need to be on guard for things that are attacking our families. Now, there is a temptation that, we must be on guard for, that I decided to call out on its own, and it's to guard the marriage contract. Not only is the family being attacked in our world, but so are marriages. And when the marriage fails, it hurts the family, no matter who's responsible. The prophet Malachi gives us this advice. He says, "Has not the one God made you? You belong to Him in body and spirit. And what does the one God seek? Godly offspring. So be on your guard, and do not be unfaithful to the wife of your youth." And I'd further say, do not be unfaithful to the husbands of your youth. Guarding the marriage covenant means avoiding the temptation of adultery. Adultery is a big temptation in our world today. Sometimes, simple friendships between a man and a woman transform into something more when they're left unchecked. And it goes both ways in families. It's not just the men, it's the women, the wives. And so for this reason, we must be careful to have safe friendships with the opposite sex. Wives should not be spending time alone with men other than their husband, father, or brother unless one or more people are present. Men, the same thing goes for you. Don't be alone with a woman who is not your wife, your mother, or a sister. Don't travel in a car alone with a woman. Do not spend time alone with other women unless there are other women or other people present. Does it sound old-fashioned? Probably. But you know what? It's probably the wisest decision that we will make in our lives when we make that effort and that decision to not put ourselves in the situation to be compromised. Don't do it. Some people in our world today believe that it's okay to have a thing that's called an open marriage. Have you heard of that? An open marriage is where the husband and the wife have intimate relations outside of their marriage, and they agree to let that happen. That's not what the Bible teaches us. That is not what's right. And it hurts the family. You're asking for trouble in your family if you're not guarding the marriage contract. But the temptation for infidelity does not just happen outside the home. Sometimes it happens right inside our homes. In the private spaces of home offices or bedrooms. Anywhere there's an internet connection. That's right. Pornography is what I'm talking about. In December of 2009, the Family Research Council released the results of a new study that they had done exploring the effects of pornography on marriage, children, and individuals. Now, everyone just said, well, the Family Research Council, well, that's a Christian organization, so that's dedicated to the promotion of marriage and family. So, of course, their study is going to link the use of pornography to a wide variety of harmful consequences, right? But what was surprising in the study is that they didn't just do that. They used a study of divorce lawyers as one of their primary sources. Citing the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, the study noted that 56% of divorce cases involved one party having an obsessive interest in pornographic websites. 68% of divorce cases involved one spouse conducting an affair with someone they met over the internet. The study also revealed that in households where one spouse suffered from an addiction to pornography, both spouses believed that watching that stuff, that material, was equivalent to adultery. Yet in most cases where the marriage ultimately ended, the addicted spouse remained controlled by his or her addiction. Reacting to these and other issues uncovered by the study, Dr. Pat Fagan of the Family Research Council said, the fact that marriage rates are dropping steadily is well known, but the impact of pornography use and its correlation to fractured families has been little discussed. The data, though, shows as pornography sales increase, the marriage rate drops. And he also noted that watching and looking at that kind of material corrodes the conscience, promotes distrust between husbands and wives, and debases untold thousands of young women. His ultimate conclusion, and he is right, is that pornography is a quiet family killer. This morning we've got to guard the sacred bond between a husband and a wife. Resist the devil's temptations. Do whatever you must to honor the bond of marriage, and in doing so, protect your family. Finally, this morning, we need to defend the family. And the best way to defend the family is make sure that your family is built on the rock, that is Jesus. As Jesus said in Luke 6 about people who listened to His words and put them into action, He said they're like a man building a house who dug down deep and laid the foundation on rock. And when the flood came, the torrent struck that house, but it could not shake it because the house was well built. When our families are built on the solid rock, the attacks of the world, the attack of Satan on our families will not shake us nor our foundation. We may experience some temporary storm damage. Don't misunderstand that. But with God's help, it can be repaired and restored if our foundation is still good. Have no doubt this morning that Satan is still working in the world today to attack and destroy the time-honored, God-ordained institution of the family. The family unit is under attack from every side. So build your family on a solid faith and trust and love of God above. And you know what else we need to do to defend our family? Know what your children are being taught. This includes your children and your grandchildren. In schools at all levels, from elementary to high school to college, theories and worldviews are being taught that are in direct opposition to the Word of God. And unchecked, our children will become indoctrinated with ideas and ideologies that put families at opposition with each other. Ideologies that are against the teachings of the Bible that we hold dear. Ideologies that are designed to tear down the family and to destroy the family values to which we ascribe. Do not take that lightly. Talk with your children. Talk with your grandchildren. Find out what they're studying. Find out what they're learning. Look up the books that they are reading in classes. Be involved. Protect your family. Have open lines of communication in your family. Let your family be the place where thoughts and concerns can be shared without judgment. Families that communicate openly and honestly with each other are stronger. The bonds between the family are stronger, and the roots of the family are deeper, and it helps them to withstand the winds and the storms of the attacks of Satan. And in this digital age, set age-appropriate and biblical limits and boundaries on electronics and access to the internet. Then finally, ensure that you come to church together and worship together as a family. I started this point by saying that we need to build our family on the rock. This is how we keep our families on the rock. Worshiping together as a family shows your children the importance of family, of worship, of God, of community. Worshiping together allows us to talk about the study of Scriptures. Worshiping together builds a bond within our family. Worshiping together is time spent together. Then let the worship go home with you and become part of your family's routine. Spend time in prayer together and in the Word of God together. You know, this morning, the family that God has given us is a built-in support system if we allow it to be. The family is a blessing from God. The family is a time-honored institution that God ordained at the beginning of time. And so together, today, we must support each other, protect each other, and most importantly, love each other. Are families perfect? No. I know some of your families. You know my family. We're not perfect. Do we have room to grow? Absolutely. For the love of family, we must do whatever we can to ensure that our families are built on God, are full of love for each other, and are protected from the attacks of the world around us. This morning, Jim Peterson tells the story of Mario, a friend from South America with whom he had studied the Bible for 4 years before Mario became a Christian. And the Bible studies reflected the fact that Mario was a Marxist intellectual who had read all of the leading Western philosophers. And so a couple of years after his conversion, Mario and Jim were talking, and they were reminiscing, and so Mario asked, "Do you remember what it really was that made me decide to become a Christian?" And so Jim thought about all of their Bible studies and the philosophical discussions and really wasn't sure. And so Mario's reply took him by surprise. He said, "Remember that first time I stopped by your house? We were on our way someplace together, and I had a bowl of soup with you and your family. And as I was sitting there observing you and your wife and your children and how you related to each other, I asked myself, when will I have that relationship like this with my fiancée? When I realized that the answer was never, I concluded I had to become a Christian for the sake of my own survival." Well, Jim Peterson did remember that occasion. He remembered it this way, though. His children were behaving so badly, and he was extremely frustrated with having to correct them in front of Mario to the point he was embarrassed by how his children were behaving. Yet Mario, in that moment, saw the grace of Christ binding a family together. Years later, Peterson would comment on this incident. He said, "We tend to see the weaknesses and the incongruent in our messed up lives, And our reaction is to recoil at the thought of letting outsiders get close enough to see us as we really are. Even if our assessment is accurate, it is my observation that any Christian who is sincerely seeking to walk with God, in spite of all of his flaws, is reflecting something of Christ. You know, no matter how dysfunctional we think our families are, if we are doing our best to live as children of God, we are an example to the world about what it means to be a family, what it means to be in the family of God, what it means to enjoy God's love for us. This morning, maybe your family is completely dysfunctional. Maybe you are struggling with maintaining a family that is God-centered. Maybe you are seeking ways to strengthen your family. The answer is found in the love that God has for us. Because you know what? It's the place where we all start. Recognizing that we all make mistakes, that we all sin, and despite that, God still loves us. Maybe this morning you need to feel that love, to give up your burdens of sin, to surrender your life to Him. Today, I say, is the day to start over. Maybe you need prayer for your family. Today is the day to confess your brokenness with the family of God, to entrust the family of God with your pain, and allow us to carry your burdens alongside you. No matter what, the church, the family of God, is here to support, encourage, and strengthen our families today. Folks, the family is under attack. We need to do whatever we can for the love of family, to love it, protect it, guard it, build it up, encourage it at all costs. Today, if you have a decision to make, take a step of faith and allow God's love to flow through your lives today.